Welcome to the Selling Show, where we unpack, repack, and break down exactly how CEOs, founders, and senior executives sell their ideas, point of view, and personal brand to the people who matter most. This is your host, David Newman, and you are in the right place if you want to build market eminence, amplify your influence, and attract high-value prospects, investors, partners, talent, and media opportunities with less chasing and more confidence. Let's go. I like to sometimes call myself the guy behind the guy, but I have something for you even better today. I have the why behind the buy guy. Please welcome my friend Phil Masiello to the Selling Show.
That was a great intro.
I'll tell you, man, you are the premium guy. You have such a fantastic background. For the people that don't know, Phil, could you just start a little bit of a history and the professional journey that brought you to the work that you're doing today and some fun pit stops along the way?
Oh, boy. Yeah, I can do that. I've been an entrepreneur most of my life. I grew up in the restaurant business. I always thought that was going to be my career. I went to college, and I went to college in Miami, and I was working in the hotels and restaurants down there, and I realized it wasn't a career for me. It's nothing, it's very night focused, and nothing good happens when you get out of work at 2:00 in the morning. So, but I still loved food. So when I got done with college and I worked for a few years, I opened up a specialty food retail store. And I was in New York. I grew up in New York, and the store itself was fine. But the operations, I just totally messed it up. It was just a failure on my part, failure of leadership, failure of process management, just a disaster on the back end. And I say this all the time. I feel so sorry for the people who worked for me at that point in time, because it must have been terrible coming to work every day. It was chaos, pure chaos. And I knew it. And so I wound up selling that business after about 3 years. And I'm not one to give up, but I knew that there was something wrong and I needed something else. So I went to graduate school, not because I needed more education, but I needed to think differently. And I took some of the money that I made and I invested in a specialty food retail store in Washington, D.C. I went down to Maryland. And from there, the guys that were putting that deal together were really smart guys, real estate developers and also operators. And that's really where I learned to think differently and be a better leader. We scaled that business, and then we wound up exiting, and I started something called the Daily Market, which were grab-and-go meal stores in D.C. And we were doing quite well. We were positioned in really good neighborhoods, and I was a much better operator at that time. And I had this idea. I thought, wouldn't it be cool to start selling food on the internet? Because it was the beginning of e-commerce. And I was looking at what guys like Omaha Steaks were doing. And so we started to do meals. And it worked okay. It worked enough in that we attracted a major supermarket chain to look at us. And they wound up acquiring us, not because of the stores, but because of the website. At that time, nobody understood websites. They felt we could buy this, we could get this website, get this guy to help us, and we can turn this into our home shopping. So that's what happened. And I was working for them for a couple of years, and then wound up with an objective to build a beauty brand with a woman named Carol Alt, who was a supermodel back in the 80s. And we built this raw branded beauty line, because Carol had started to write books on the raw lifestyle. She had credibility in the space, and we turned it into a brand. We launched it on the shopping channels, which the shopping channels are all about storytelling and using video. And so we did very well. We were there. We were in Canada. We were in multiple shopping channels around. And then we got into retail. We were in Ulta Beauty, Sephora, Shoppers Drug Mart, and a bunch of places. We were also one of the first brands outside of book, CDs, music, et cetera, on Amazon when Amazon opened up the platform in 2006.
Yeah.
And so we did well for a number of years, sold it to a company that was a division of J&J, and Carol and I had to work for them for a couple of years handling the marketing. But I had this idea to do shaving while I was doing that. And I approached Energizer about doing shaving. The Energizer has the battery division, but they also had personal care. It's now called Edgewell. But they own Schick, they own Wilkinson, they own Persona. And when you look at the shaving market, the high quality blade market, there's only two players. There's Gillette and there's Schick. The rest of them are really offshore guys that have little niches here and there. And so we had cut a deal with them. And after we finished what we were doing with Raw, we went to, I started the shaving business. We struggled the first year, and it was really tough. And nothing was working. We had a unique message. We were the only ones out there with an American-made razor that was, reasonably priced for both men and women. There was no pink tax, no nothing. And so, but it just wasn't getting anywhere. And I was getting a little discouraged. One morning I woke up. This is just a quick story that you might enjoy since you're in the selling world of it. I woke up and I was reading sports, and there was a pitcher at the time who pitched for the San Francisco Giants named Brian Wilson. And Brian Wilson always caught flack. I believe he paid hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines to the MLB because he had this epic beard. I mean, this guy had a beard like nobody ever saw. And Major League Baseball hated it. But he wasn't going to shave it, and he didn't care about the fines. And so he got injured, Tommy John surgery, got traded to the Dodgers. He was going to pitch for the first time in a year, and it was big news. So I had this idea. We got in touch with his people and said, we'll pay Brian $1 million to shave with our razor. And it wasn't just our razor. It was a whole system. We had shave cream, aftershave. We had this whole piece. And we got back a response saying, we will run that by Brian. And that's all I needed, because now I could legally say I am in discussions with Brian Wilson to shave his beard for $1 million. And we had our PR firm push it out, and it went crazy. It went insane. We had people sending us pictures on social media of every body part you could think of with a price tag on it saying, I'll shave this for $5,000. I'll shave this for $10,000. I'll shave this. All the sports networks wanted to interview us because they were like, are you guys nuts? Then we had the other people who were just angry at us. How could you give a guy who's a millionaire $1 million? What's wrong with you people? People are starving in the world, all that. And it just went nuts, but it did its job, and we got noticed and we got orders. And that went on for about 10 days. And then it started to die off, as these things do. And all of a sudden, TMZ catches Brian Wilson coming out of a gym in LA, and they said, hey, you're going to take the $1 million. Well, he goes on this expletive rant of how he's not shaving his beard for anybody. Well, it goes nuts again. And people are now outraged that he wouldn't take the $1 million. And so, it was harmless in the fact that nobody got hurt. It was just a stunt, but it got us noticed. And for about 3 or 4 weeks, we got a tremendous amount of orders, and that really launched us, because once we got those orders, then we had all these customers that we could, retain, have long-term value with. They were all happy with the product, and then we could use them to get their friends and family, et cetera, et cetera. So that's really how we launched that. But what happened was, suddenly, everybody decided to be in the shaving business. Harry's and Dollar Shave Club and all these guys just came into the business, and it just got insane. And suddenly everybody wanted to be in the shaving business, and we started to get offers to sell, and we wound up selling a little bit prematurely, but we sold. And about a month after that, I got a call from Edgewell, Energizer, saying, hey, we don't know anything about direct to consumer. Everything we do, we sell to supermarkets, drug, club stores, et cetera. Can you help us understand this and help us understand selling on Amazon? We sell to Amazon, but we don't sell on Amazon. And how to sell on e-commerce. So I said, yeah, I'm not a consultant, but we can set up a structure. And so I started the predecessor to Crunch Growth, and we started doing their work. And then we started doing others, and we only work with brands. That's all we focus on, and we basically help people market. We advertise. We advertise on connected TV. We advertise on the traditional channels, Google, Meta, etc. We do programmatic advertising. We have a social media group because we have this background in doing shopping channel and direct response television. We understand how to script short form video, long form video to sell, not just to make pretty videos, but to actually sell. We're not as good as the Harmon brothers, but I'd like to think that we're pretty good. And so that's sort of the backbone of what we do today. And yeah, that's how we go about life every day.
Hey now, what a great episode, right? Are you ready to build your own Market Eminence game plan using the power of speaking, publishing, and podcasting? Book a chat with me to build your plan and see if and how I might help you further. The link is doitmarketing.com/call. No sales team, no pressure, no goofballs, just you and me having a CEO to CEO chat about what's possible for you and your company. Hop on with me, doitmarketing.com/call. And now, let's jump right back into the interview. Now, earlier I mentioned about we're going to talk about the new book, the newest book, The Why Behind the Buy. But you've written a couple of books along the way. This is not your first rodeo. What were the previous books about, and what sparked you to write those?
The first book I wrote was about selling on Amazon. And this was back in, I believe that book got released in 2016. Mm-hmm. And there were not a lot of, it wasn't as robust as it is today. But there were a lot of people paying a lot of money for courses that they shouldn't have been paying for, from people that didn't really know how to sell on Amazon, that were just selling them courses. So I wrote this book in an effort to sort of straighten that out. The problem became that Amazon was changing so fast that the book really became irrelevant in about 18 months. And I never sat down to update it. And I think if you're selling on Amazon, you pretty much have, and you write a book like that, you'd have to update it almost every 6 months. And then the second book was called Think, Engage, Thrive, about how to skyrocket your brand. And that was about marketing techniques on, how to build a brand and grow a brand, not just be a seller. I'm not a big fan of just the selling mentality. You have to be building a brand. Even when the book on Amazon was all about focused on brand building. And that one did quite well. And then that one got released, I think, in 2019. And then in 2022, I was, this was just something that popped into my head. I was reading in the morning, having my coffee, and I'm reading this story about, about how the first entrepreneur was that people believe was this Egyptian king called Hohotep, who used the Nile, realized that he had this asset, the Nile River, where he could take what he manufactures in Egypt, go downstream and sell it and trade with all these others and set up this whole system of trade and really advance things forward. So that got me thinking about entrepreneurship through the ages and how entrepreneurs sort of shaped society. Because if he didn't do that, Egypt wouldn't have become a powerhouse that it was. And so I started researching that. So I wrote a book on empires and entrepreneurs. It's called all about people through history, like Leonardo da Vinci was essentially an entrepreneur. The Medici family, as you go through, everybody knows, Henry Ford and all that, but I went deeper and further back. And then I wrote The Why Behind the Buy, because what we see in a lot of brands we work with is today's consumer wants to understand why I should buy your product. What is it about your product? What is it about you? Because you're not just selling your product, you're selling your brand. And in a lot of cases, when you're a startup, you can look at a brand like Glossier. She sold herself first as an expert. She had 1 million followers on her blog before she launched her first product. And to me, she just did an unbelievable job of connecting with customers and getting them to understand why they should buy her product. And then you look at a brand like Graza, or you look at a brand like Truff, and these guys, how they took a simple system, Truff, hot sauce. If there's ever a category with low barrier to entry, it's hot sauce. You can make it in your kitchen because it has such a high acidic value that you don't require a lot of you don't need any preservatives, actually. And you can pretty much market it. So anybody can make hot sauce, and they do. But Truff took it to a different level, and they created a whole different world of hot sauce, right? Highly elevated, truffle infused, and they even down to the bottle. And the same thing with Graza. It's olive oil, but they turned it into something totally different. And they did that through, giving somebody the reason why, solving the problem for somebody that existed. And so that was sort of the impetus, because it started out with a little bit of frustration because we work with so many different brands. And the first thing we always ask a brand if they're going to come on to work with us is, what is it about your brand that you can say that your competitor cannot say? What is it about that? And most of the time, they have the same message as their competitor. And if you do, then you're in the murky middle, and then you're just going to fight on price. So we try and help them do that. And sometimes they listen and sometimes they don't.
Well, let's dig into some of the pillars and principles of the why behind the buy. You meant the first chapter actually starts out with something that I think we've been saying and hearing for like the last 40 years. In the 1980s, we were saying, oh, it's the rise of the savvy consumer. In the 1990s, oh, now it's the internet. 2000s, oh, now it's social media. 2000, 2010, 2020. But I think you're right. You do put your finger on some very sort of tectonic shifts that are happening right now, 2025, 2026. What is in the Phil Masiello playbook? What is your definition of the savvy consumer today and for this next little bit of time? That's
a great question, and it's a valid point. Today's consumer has access to more information than any other group ever. The average consumer consumes 7.5 hours of your content before they make a decision about whether they want to do business with you. Now, when you think about the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, even the 90s, people didn't have that kind of access. They didn't have people creating videos to talk about their product. They didn't have people writing blogs about their product, setting up websites to talk about their product. So the consumer has far more information, and there's also this growth of so many let's call it unethical and scam sellers, that the consumer is wary. And so you have to be very authentic with the consumer, and you have to be able to show basically your growth channel, right? What you want them to know about you before they're going to buy your product, because they want to know that you're authentic. They want to know that you're real. They want to know that your product has reviews, all these different things. We didn't have to worry about that in the 90s, the 80s. Nobody's running around with reviews. Nabisco was running an ad talking about their new cookie and putting BOGOs on it at the store level, and people were buying it. But now, and it's so much easier. I think that there's so many more opportunities for smaller companies to start out and build a brand because of those same the same products that we have: short form video, long form video, et cetera.
Sure. So let me ask you this, Phil. I tend to trace the sort of celebrity CEO personal brand intersecting with the company brand to Lee Iacocca, right? We're going way old school, 1978, 1979. But this was the first. He comes out with a book called Iacocca, right? He was responsible for the whole sort of, Plymouth Dodge Chrysler turnaround. We had celebrities back then and we had CEOs back then. We never had a celebrity CEO until Lee Iacocca. Fast forward now, it's 2026. Are you recommending that the CEOs and the founders of the companies that you like to advise, where they're building a brand, they need to build their personal brand and their company brand at the same time?
If they're the founder, okay, then and you're growing that brand, then yes, you need to be out there telling people why you built your brand.
Yeah.
Because now it becomes authentic. Because now the consumer today is saying, okay, well, who are you? I don't want to buy from the nameless, faceless brand. I want to buy from somebody that I know is authentic and is doing good. And you maybe you have a story with your brand and people want to know that story. We all hear about storytelling with branding, but what really is it? And what it really is you're telling your story about the why you built your brand. So yes, I'm saying that. We always had celebrities and we always had CEOs, and celebrities were always out endorsing products, but that's a paid endorsement. When you're a person that's like, when you're a person that's built a great brand, or you've got this great brand, you've got the passion for it, and you say, look, I built this brand because of a problem I had, and this is when I found out that there were other people with this problem. Here's what my solution was. People are going to relate to that more than just, Joe Namath getting on there saying, here's a beautiful woman shaving my face with this razor.
Absolutely. And I love this. I mean, we're kind of cruising through some of the chapters in the book because you do talk about building brands versus selling products, and the era of selling products is over and building brands is where it's at. Authenticity, there's a whole chapter in there on that. Power of social media and influencers. I want to ask you about something that a lot of people take for granted, and you have some pretty interesting criteria for it, which is our websites. The importance of your website in connecting with customers, not just pitching your products and services.
Oh,
Tell us about that.
Yeah, too many times you can make great videos, you can sit there and talk about your product, but then when people go to your website, it doesn't reflect what you just told them. Now you get to the website and it's just pictures of your product and buy me, buy me, buy me.
Yeah.
And that doesn't always work. There's a place for it on another page, but when you get to the website, you really have to tell that story again and reinforce it. I'm not saying you put a video up there of you telling the story for 10 minutes. No, but you have to sort of hit those points with little buttons saying learn more, and you're taking it to the About Us page. But you can't start out with, here's this month's deal. They tune it out.
Yeah.
And you can see it. We do a lot of work with conversion rate optimization with a lot of our clients on their websites, and we show them that. Because if you're going to spend the time, the effort, and the money to get people over to your website, you want to maximize and optimize that website.
Tell us a little bit about your philosophy around connection building, this sort of warm, human, either building connections with customers, building communities around your brand, your mission, your vision. What's the Phil playbook on building connection?
I think that's really the heart of building a brand. When you can get people to connect with you and your brand and trust your brand, then it makes your life a lot easier to come out with ancillary products that support your brand. I think that, again, Truff did a really good job of it, right? They started out with this elevated hot sauce. They connected with people in the Whole Foods market by giving away free packets of product to try it. People loved it. And then all of a sudden they started doing other products. They came out with, again, a brand congruent pasta sauce, had truffle infused pasta sauce. And it was an easy sell because people bought the hot sauce. They bought the message. They bought the relationship with Truff. They trusted them. And then it was easier to sell the hot sauce. Then they came out with a mayonnaise. Then they came out with, other products. And then they started coming out with limited edition products. So it's a little bit easier once you've built this connection to, and you've got this community of people talking about it, then you're letting your customer almost do the selling for you. Because when you go on the websites, you go on social media, it's really the customers putting content out there going, hey man, I bought this hot sauce. I really love it. You go on these hot sauce forums and you get these guys that are doing all kinds of things with various hot sauce brands, and Truff always comes up. People, they get this discussion about the pros and the cons. So I think when you build a community, when you've done your job of building a brand, and people, you've essentially built trust with that brand, with the consumer, and then they're going to start doing the heavy lifting for you. They're going to start talking about your product, talking about your brand on social media, on forums, and then it just snowballs from there.
Well, as we're recording this on the tail end of 2025, you have a fantastic chapter that sort of caps off the end of the book about future marketing trends and the role of AR, VR, AI, and automation. And obviously, we can't have a podcast in 2025 without talking about AI, not to mention those other things. What do you see? What is in your crystal ball as far as just for the unwashed out there, augmented reality, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and automation?
AR, VR, I think we see it, more and more as the technology improves. And I think it plays a big role in product decision making, especially in certain industries like fashion and cosmetics and beauty and hair color and things like that. Because now, or even eyeglasses, you can try them on virtually. And the technology is getting so good that you can visualize it. You can visualize what this dress is going to look like on you. You can visualize what this outfit is going to look like on you. You can take a walking tour through a house before you buy the house, before you even bother going to visit the house live. Yeah. So it enables you to do a lot of the legwork and say, okay, I'm going to buy this shirt. How's it going to look on me? Rather than going to the store, trying it on a million different ways. Now I've done all this. Now I just have to make sure it's right sized. So I think AR, VR has really strong potential to allow customers to almost do a lot of the legwork in pre-buying. Automobiles, any of that.
Sure.
You see it all over the place, and the technology is getting so much better every day. And VR, you can requires a headset, but where I see VR is we have a client that's in assisted living, and they build these communities for the elderly, independent living, assisted living, and then dementia care. But when they're building the community, they have a trailer out there. People don't know what it's going to look like. They can maybe go and look at one of their other ones and get an idea. But as they evolve, each one becomes different. Well, you can sit in there, put on a headset, and actually walk through what they're envisioning this place is going to look like. So I see that technology really being helpful. AI, there's so much information about AI and so many different things. Here's my position on AI. We've been using AI in our company for about 7 years. When it comes to data analytics and understanding things, phenomenal job. I can't tell you how great it is to understand the behavior of advertising and pulling all that data in to give you an understanding of what worked, what didn't work. And AI we use repetitive tasks to build some sort of an agent to pick up repetitive tasks, that this way we can focus more on, things that are meaningful. What I don't like about AI, and what I think is I don't see it ever becoming that big of a deal in the consumer product space where I live, is AI-generated advertising and AI-generated images. We've tested it. Consumers don't like it. It's not authentic. We've just sat here speaking about the authenticity of a brand and how consumers want it. And I see too many people just pushing these AI-driven ads out there, and they don't work. And we've tested them. I wish it was that easy, but it's not. Now, where does AI have a place in ads? It definitely has a place in targeting, that you can do a much better job of targeting. I can deliver an ad to you that's relevant to you, and that's got to do with personalization. Great. Do I want AI to create that image? No. I don't want it to create the video, but we use it to edit videos. Things like that. So I think AI is going to continue to evolve. When it's consumer facing, I think that you have to tread lightly, because if you have to make sure that who you are is coming through. Because if you're just going to put an AI generated image of yourself out there, consumers are just going to walk away, because now you're inauthentic, and now they're going to be wary of you. And I just read a study this morning. There's a big discussion on LinkedIn actually about this very thing. And I read a study this morning that says 72% of consumers who see an AI driven ad reject the brand, or reject the advertiser. And so, that's my point about AI. I think AI is a great tool. We use it in places where I think it's useful, but we never do it where it's going to be focused on consumer. And automation, I think, is a phenomenal tool for staying in touch with customers, making sure that you're on top of them, pre-sale, post-sale, email automations, things that are giving feedback. You always want to stay in touch with your consumer and find out what they think, how they feel, what they like, what they don't like about your product, and continue to respond to that and make sure that they know that you're listening. And I think that's all part of being authentic and part of building a community.
Holy smokes, so much value in this episode. Listen, if you are loving what you're hearing, feel free to download, subscribe, tell a friend, leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to The Selling Show. Now, back to the interview. Now, one thing we haven't talked about yet, Phil, is you also, in addition to being a serial entrepreneur, really great business book author that has lots of smart ideas that you share with the world, there's a mentorship component to your business. And I believe your mentorship is in sort of different stages, right? So there's one for the emerging entrepreneur, one for the established, and one for the more senior and successful. Tell us about how you got into the mentoring business, and what does that look like today?
Well, it started at pre-COVID at the University of Maryland School of Entrepreneurship, and I was asked if I would mentor young entrepreneurs, and I said, sure. I love entrepreneurs. I love the startup community. To me, it's very exciting, and I love to hear what people are working on. And so I started mentoring. And then after post-COVID, it turned into more of a online through Zoom. But I got involved in other universities to mentor. And then I do set up groups, because there's a million coaches out there, most of which have never done what they coach.
Yeah.
And I have, and I can tell you that I was having this conversation a week ago, and I gave a presentation to a bunch of young entrepreneurs, and I said, I founded 10 businesses in my life, but only 4 were successful. So I feel like I'm doing pretty good, because when you think about that, that's like a 400 batting average, right? Whereas the great batter in baseball is batting 330. So I said, I feel good about that. But the reality is I've had 6 failures, and I'm okay with that. I can tell you why they failed, what I did to do that, but failure is part of learning, and you should never be afraid of failure, and you shouldn't hide from it. But the reality is coaches, mentors don't like to deal with startup guys and that world, because A, they don't have any money to pay the coaches, and B, they can't say that they've been through it. It's really difficult to find a coach that's really been through the world of startups. So rather than trying to do one-on-ones, I put together groups. And the benefit of that is you've got, say, 8 or 10 startup entrepreneurs that you can help, give guidance to, but they can also learn from each other and communicate. Yeah. And then as they progress, I'll tell you that every startup, every business gets going, you maybe get to $1 million or $2 million or $3 million, and you hit a wall. And you need somebody to talk to, because you need somebody who's been there, who can say, look, here's how we do this. And then, maybe you get to 15, 20, 25 million and you hit another wall. I'll give you a quick story. We had a client who came to us about 3 years ago, and They were doing the entrepreneur started the business, did really well. They had a brand, and they also sold wholesale, and they got from 0 to 20 million in about 5 years, and they were doing phenomenal. But then they were stuck at that $20 million range for about 3 years. And they kept thinking that it was an advertising and marketing problem, and they were burning through agencies. And they came to us, and I'm always hesitant when somebody says, we burned through 3 agencies in the last 2 years. So I said, look, let's really talk about this. And I looked at the team, and there was this guy that they had hired who was just a phenomenal. I knew him from the industry. I didn't know him personally, but I knew of him in the industry. This guy was an A++ player. This guy understood their world, and he wasn't making any headway. And I said, hey, before we get into this kind of engagement, can we have a 2-day offsite? And we had a 2-day offsite where we were analyzing the business. About 3 hours in to the first day, I found the problem, which was I asked outright this A++ player, I said, why do you think you're having so many problems getting out there? You've got a great product. You've got the history, the background. And he said, I have to work off the CEO's schedule. He said he wants to be on every single sales call. So I'm not working off the prospect schedule. I'm working off his schedule, and he's running advertising, marketing. He's running operations. He's running finance. He's running everything, purchasing. I said, why would you do that? You're at 20 million. You have to get to the point where you're the CEO now. You have to start managing. And it literally took us that complete day and then the next day to get him to understand until he finally relented. Once he took the handcuffs off, I said, just be there for the close. And once he took the handcuffs off, this guy went wild, and literally within 2 years doubled their sales.
Wow.
And just, and it was just phenomenal to watch. So I said, you see, it wasn't an advertising or marketing problem. You're your own obstacle.
Yeah.
And you see that a lot with entrepreneurs. And I'll tell you again, on my first business where I said I was a failure of leadership, I was the obstacle every single day. I felt like I'm the entrepreneur. It was my idea. It's my business. I have to know everything. I have to, and it's just not a good way of doing it. And you can potentially be damaging your own company, but sometimes you need an outside party to sort of set you straight. So that's where the whole mentoring piece comes in.
Yeah. Yeah, really, really great. Well, Phil, I know people are going to want to get connected and stay connected to more Phil Masiello brilliance. They want to pick up a copy of the book. What links and what resources can we put in the show notes for people?
Sure. You can reach me, philmasiello.com. You can reach me there. You can reach me on LinkedIn, Phil Masiello. You can reach me on social media, Phil Masiello. The book is available on Amazon, The Why Behind the Buy. All my books are available on Amazon. You can feel free to reach out to me. People do it all the time. So love to hear from you.
Tremendous. All right. And all of those resources Phil just mentioned will be directly under this episode at bestsellingshow.com. Phil, you're a rock star. I appreciate you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
And that wraps up another episode of The Selling Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, tell a friend, go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thesellingshow.com. See you next time.